Welcome to Truth, Money, and Freedom. Today is Friday, November 29th, 2019. It's Black Friday, gang. Be safe out there. Hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving and you spent time with loved ones, family, and friends. And I want to start out this video and I want to say a few words to our good friend Nick at Freedom Inc. For those of you who don't know, Nick is a constitutionalist. We kind of partnered up with his channel here a 3 weeks back, and but recently he has not been putting out videos, and he put one out on just earlier this week, and I wasn't even aware of it. One of my subs had contacted me directly to let me know that Nick had put out a video because I was working so much I wasn't watching any YouTube videos. So I did go and see Nick's video. It's heartbreaking. And Nick at Freedom Inc. Lost his son to some kind of gunshot incident. And I just want to let you know, Nick, that our prayers are with you. There is nothing I can give in the way of advice because I thank God that I have never been in the position that you have found yourself in at this point in time. And I pray that you get some kind of healing and faster and then would be normal, because I think time might be the only thing to help you with this one. Words cannot describe what this man is going through right now. You know, he lost his son. And I'm going to go ahead and link his video down below. It's a great title. It's called Hug Your Kids. And just remember, you know, that nothing is promised to any of us. Nothing. So our lives may end tomorrow. Just make sure that you know, and that the people around you know, that you love each other. And that was the message he sent out with this video. Nick, our hearts go out to you, buddy. And I hope that, in fact, I'm at a loss for words. Normally I try to give people advice, and there's lots of advice in the Bible for when things like this happen, but the fact of the matter is it's painful nonetheless, and I hope that you guys find some comfort and that you heal very quickly. Okay, I would like to move on, and I'd like to announce that I have American Man with me today. I know a lot of you have wondered what happened to American Man. So American Man is here today with us to let us know what's going on with him. Hey, American Man.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going okay, man. Thanks for joining me today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So you want to tell us what you're doing, where you're going? Do you have a channel up and running anywhere else?
Yeah, thanks for asking that very important question, TC. First of all, before I answer that, I would like to give my condolences to this gentleman who lost his son. I just want to let him know that he's in my prayers, and I hope that God will heal him and his family quickly. Now to answer your question, first of all, since I took my YouTube channel down a few months back, it's been a while since I've made any videos. I've been very, very busy. I got engaged to my girlfriend, excuse me, Kim, that was periodically appearing in my videos while I was still on YouTube. And she has now trying to open a business locally where we live. It's called a paint party business, or sip and paint. And I've been trying to help her with that. Also, I've been going back to high school to try and finish my high school diploma. This late in life, but it's something that's very important to me. And I also want to show my son. I have a 15-year-old son who's struggling right now with Common Core in the state of California, which is very difficult. And I'm studying the same thing. So I'm trying to inspire my son to finish high school. I'm also studying on the side on my own, as you know, as you've been a big inspiration to me, to go for my A+ certification, and then my Security Plus and my Microsoft certification to get into IT. So I've been very, very busy. But I'm going to start making videos again, guys. I'm on Brighteon. I've uploaded, I think, 3 of my old videos. I've gone to D Tube. I have a page there, but I haven't uploaded any videos. When I do upload some videos, I will contact TC here at Truth, Money, and Freedom, and he can then notify you guys. I'm currently working on a new intro, and I'm trying to learn better a program called Power Director, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
for PCs. I had the app on my phone, and I know how to use that fairly well. So basically, I'll be making about 1 to 2 videos per month once I finally get going back on all that and get on the platform and start producing videos again.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll be too busy to be doing, making videos every week, every day like I used to do because, well, I'm getting married and I'm just trying to move on with my life. I still want to be a very important part of the freedom movement. But everything that's been going down with YouTube, I knew that it was time for me personally, I can't speak for anybody else, to get off the platform as I felt threatened by CIA, YouTube operatives in the government. So,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the state of California, because of the red flag laws that we have here, I didn't want to be labeled a terrorist in my own country.
Yeah.
So basically, that's what's going on with me.
Okay, and that's a wonderful testament. There's several things here I'd like to comment on real quick before we go to our main story. Um, God bless you for working to be an inspiration for your son because that's missing in society today. I think a lot of fathers don't take that seriously, and it's very important. Young men do need someone to look up to, and if it can't be their dad, hopefully it's also someone who is just as morally upright. And but you're doing the right thing by
Thank you.
finishing up your high school diploma.
Thank you.
Second
I
thing is,
appreciate that.
I'd like to comment on what you said about making videos. Despite the fact that I'm an IT guy, as you know, um,
Right.
I'm an IT guy that works on domain controllers, Windows domain controllers. I work on Exchange servers and SQL servers, and I have grown into that over decades. And
Hmm.
I too struggle with the technology to make really good looking slick videos. And
Yeah.
so just so you know, gang, there's a lot of wonderful content creators out there that are not making slick videos with transitions and
That's
swipes
right.
and sound effects and visual effects, but the content is awesome.
Right.
So I would remind you all that you just don't judge the book by its cover. There's a lot of great content providers that simply don't know how to do that stuff or don't have the money to buy the software to do that stuff.
Right.
So, and also one more comment. We have about 11 days left before YouTube enacts their new policies for content creators.
Right.
So you guys know I'm on DTube. I will start listing my DTube channel below in the videos, but I also intend to probably put up a channel on BitChute, and I'm probably going to continue on with Library. And there are reasons for that. I'll make a separate video about that, but I'll probably be on those 3 platforms. And the content, hopefully, like I said, I got a lot going on in my life too. Hopefully, I can get more content out faster as soon as this stuff I have on my plate with insurance and work and paperwork, and there's a lot of all of that is off my
Right.
plate. So without further ado, I'd like to go into the story now, if I could, American man.
Oh
Um,
yeah, go for it.
okay, a poll finds that 42% of young Americans would elect a socialist president. Let me read a little bit further. A new poll conducted by Rasmussen has discovered that 42% of Americans aged 18 to 39 would happily vote for a socialist presidential candidate. Americans in the younger age group are also twice as likely to prefer socialism to capitalism, according to the findings. Now, Rand Paul chimed in with a tweet about how pilgrims abandoned common law ownership in favor of private ownership or private property. Now, private property doesn't exist anymore in the United States. It does in certain small instances, but believe me, it's much finer than a percentage of 1%. So we're talking about the Homestead Act, which I will do a separate video on. I would like to talk about that directly. But what we're saying here is the the kids today that are looking for capitalism, or I'm sorry, for socialism to save them so they don't have to pay for college, so they don't have to pay for health care, are really just fooling themselves because in the end, they will pay for it when they get jobs anyway, with much higher taxes and a lower standard of living. So there are solutions to all problems, but socialism is what we already have in the United States. And I'm going to give the microphone to American Man here in a second, but I'm going to bring up three examples. Social Security, that's socialism. They take money from you, whether you want it or not, and they collect it into a pool of money. And if you should pass away before you can collect your Social Security number, your next of kin does not get that money. That money goes to the broader good. Social, let's go to Social Security. Let's do public schools. Also, they take money from you, and that goes directly into what I was talking about here about private property. Private property does not exist anymore because it's all real estate. So, and that real estate is not real. It's a lease. The government owns your property. And I've talked about this before. Stop paying your property taxes. You'll find out very quickly who actually owns your property. And it doesn't matter if you've actually. Hey, Chaos Craig, thank you for joining us. We're in the middle of a podcast right now.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I just wanted to see what you were streaming.
Okay, gotcha. And so at any rate, so we have the disparity now between real estate and private property. But in America, there is no private property anymore. There's very little of it, tiny vestiges left over from the Homestead Act. But believe me, most of it's gone. And I will do a separate video about that, I promise you. So the examples of socialism in the United States are vast. We are not the capitalist society or the democracy that the media and the politicians would have you believe. It's simply not true. We've already bitten into the apple of socialism. In fact, we're down to the apple core here, gang. Many aspects of our government, our finance, and our culture are now socialist. So I'm sorry, I've hogged up the microphone. American Man, would you like to comment on a few of these things?
Yeah, just recently studying American history, even though some of it was convoluted, a lot of it was true. Young people nowadays don't realize the transition that took place from the time that the Pilgrims, as it were, came over here, the 13 colonies that were formed in the United States. Why they came here to get away from religious persecution because they wanted to practice Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
They came here to practice that. They came here to practice freedom of speech, the right to own property, and the right to own a gun, and to pursue happiness in whichever form they chose to do that in. Some raised crops, some raised livestock, some were blacksmiths. There were several different forms of making a living back then. I call them the arts and crafts of the 18th century or 17th century. And far back as the 1600s in America, when people first came over here, they did all kinds of things to carve out a life in America. And as the European government, or what we know as the European nation or the UK or Britain, came over here and passed all these laws, the king, and tried to control the Americans, and what transpired here, the people rebelled. Finally, they had had enough of being taxed and taxed and taxed and taxed and taxed, and told what they could do and what they couldn't do. To keep this in layman's terms, they rebelled. And this is what started a war. And we fought against a tyrannical overseer, okay? And we got our independence. And then we formed a government ourselves, and we formed a constitution, the Bill of Rights. We did that for a purpose, because we wanted freedom. Even though those people that did all these things did, unfortunately, at that time, enslave other people. And that's for a story for another video. I don't want to go into that. My point is this: America has walked away from our roots. We have become programmed, we have become brainwashed through different forms of media to accept the same type of thing that we once escaped, came away from, and came here to form a country and a government to be under for freedom.
Can
And
I add
everything
to that
that
real quick, American Man?
yeah,
Because there's
go
one you
ahead.
missed that's really important.
Go ahead.
The brainwashing is really in the public school system.
Yes.
And that's where, by the way, public schools are also part of socialism.
A very big part. Yeah.
So that's where private schools, may or may not be a part of that system, but there's a lot more parental activity with the curriculum. And whereas in the public schools, this is government mandated stuff. And
Right.
I feel very blessed right now to have American Man and Craig, if he chooses to chime in, because those two guys live in the most socialist states of the United States. American Man's in
Right.
California, Chaos Craig is in New York. And both of them have some pretty heavy duty socialist programs within their states. But
Yeah.
yeah, and Craig, you can chime in if you want to at any point here. We're just kind of talking about the fact that the young Americans would elect a socialist president if they could.
Oh, definitely. I believe that's on the horizon. We'll be having a very hardcore socialist president very soon, in my opinion. And I don't want to name names of politicians, because we've discussed this many times over the last year or so in the chat when we've done these videos. I'll just stick to politicians as a whole. In my opinion, and what I have seen, because I'm 52 years old, you and I are the same generation. We grew up around the same time in the 80s.
Hmm.
Freedom back then meant a lot to Americans in America. And I am brought back to a time, it was just as being a teenager, where wearing the flag around your head as a bandana or article of clothing or on your vehicle or in your home, putting a flag up in your bedroom or on a wall in your house, or framing a flag, there was pride behind it. It meant something. The Statue of Liberty, the bald eagle, all these symbols meant freedom from tyranny and a tyrannical government and socialism. Now these things are spat upon, they're mocked, they're made fun of, they're hated,
Hmm.
because young people have been programmed to believe that freedom is their enemy and that socialism is the answer to all their problems, because they have a me mentality. They're socialist in their mind. They're self-centered. They're self-righteous. They're very narcissistic. And it's all about me. And if the government can give me anything and everything, well, then I'm going to give them whatever they want, including my freedom of speech, my right to bear arms. And I'm going to allow them to brainwash me to think in the form they want me to think. And this is terrible. Thank God our generation remembers what like our generation can even look back and remember the time of the Cold War between us, the communist country of Russia. I remember that. We would practice drills. And you wanted to bring up public schools. I went to a public school, and I remember hiding under my desk. An alarm, it was just a drill, would go off in my school. And I was told that this was the Cold War, and we were practicing a drill in case a nuclear bomb was dropped on our country. And so we ducked under our desk. And even though it was a drill, I was terrified. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand. All I knew is that I could die. And so I remember what freedom or a taste of freedom was like. But I digress. Go ahead.
Okay, Chaos Craig, please come in.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out that it's kind of ironic that the most socialist cohort of all, the millennials, are actually leaving New York and California because of the high cost of living that comes with big government, high tax states.
Right.
They're all about the
Very
cause, but they don't want to pay for the effect. Is that what you're saying, Craig?
right.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. The effect of these policies are to reduce productivity and create stagflation and more taxes.
Yep. And there is someone famous who once said, and I
Sorry.
can't remember who it was, but they said that it might have been Churchill or something like that, is that when I was a child, I could afford to be socialist, but when I started working, I couldn't afford it anymore.
Yeah,
And so I think that's lost on many people today. They want free school. They want free health care. And there's nothing that's free in that.
they
It,
just don't make the connection between the fact that the high expenses are because of the policies they support.
right. And
And then they're going, and then they're leaving these states, and they're taking their voting track record with them,
mhm.
coming to
Yeah.
a state near you.
Yep.
They're taking their socialist mindset and polluting another state and turning it socialist.
That's the
Okay.
problem with democracy is you have
Right.
to.
I mean, I would like to chime in here real quick, gentlemen, and I'd like to make a statement, and I'd like to make the statement very proudly. My understanding of democracy, my understanding of that is very detrimental to society. Because if you can brainwash the majority, then the rest, the minority, is screwed.
Yep. Well, and I think it's important to point out too that in these studies, literally the millennials are saying capitalism has failed. We need to go socialist, and they don't
Yeah.
understand that we're already
Yep.
75% the way there. We're already there. It's
Yep.
socialism. Capitalism did fail. Craig and I could go on and on about this. How it failed: corrupt politicians, corrupt business leaders, corporatism.
Socialism for banks and large
Yep.
corporations.
That's exactly
So
right.
Right.
Bailouts for the banks. That
Socialism
is
for politicians. That's your socialism that's destroying efficiency in a marketplace,
Yep, a great point, Craig. Great point.
and
I
that's what's
didn't even
exploding
think
the cost of housing, healthcare, and education. Yet the
exactly.
socialists believe that they need more help from the government to help them afford housing, healthcare, and education, but it was government that caused them not to be able to afford housing, healthcare, and education. so,
Well,
so
I'm
they're
just going to
just
say
more of the same.
if we had
Unfortunately,
if we had a true capitalist system, the bank bailouts would not have happened. It's
yeah.
Right.
it's really that simple, gang. 2008 would have seen a reset. We would have seen literally a debt reset and a financial collapse if we had a capitalist system. We do not. That's your evidence right there. If you ever wanted to know, hey, is there any proof financially that we are actually in a socialist system? There it is, 2008. And instances before then, for instance, the S&L bailouts that we all forget about back in 87 or something like that.
Excuse me. Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, I mean, if you just look at wages, if you go back to an entry-level factory worker in Henry Ford's factory, they're making 60 ounces of gold a year.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
more than $90,000 today, and they didn't have an income tax or labor unions or any type of labor laws or a minimum wage law. So
Hey.
none of these price controls work.
Craig, that was such an important point. Can we expand on that a bit?
Sure.
What Craig just said is when Ford was making the Model T, employees of Ford were making the equivalent, the fiat equivalent of how many ounces of silver?
60 ounces of gold a year.
Or I'm sorry, 60 ounces of gold per year. If you guys, in fact, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and find out exactly how much that is today. So I just brought up Bullion Vault. And we got 1,466. Let's bring up the handy dandy calculator and go 1,466 times 60 equals. They were making, the workers at Ford were making in today's terms, today's nominal terms, $87,000 a year working at Ford, churning out cars.
That's an entry level position. If you were college educated and a young professional, you would start making, like 500 ounces
Yep.
of gold per year.
Okay.
Nowadays, you have someone who has a college degree enters the labor force, starts making $60,000 a year,
Yep.
right?
Well,
And that's
this is amazing actually when you think about it, because when was the Model T being pushed out? 1907, 1908. Does that sound right?
early
Somewhere
1900s.
around there.
This is
Yep.
before the central bank, before fiat
Yep.
currency, the
Correct.
gold standard.
Yep. But that was my point. Before 1913, the creation of the Federal Reserve and
Right.
the ending of basically capitalist
Yeah.
banking.
And all these
We're,
numbers are without an income tax as
Yep.
well.
Yep. So you got
we're
to keep all that money. You paid for your own health care, you paid for your own retirement, but we have done podcast upon podcast upon
But
podcast
as a
about how
percentage of
people.
your income, those things are a much lower percentage.
Correct.
When government touched
Correct.
them.
Yeah, that was because Woodrow Wilson took us partly off the gold standard, and that's what destroyed America.
Yep. So basically, let's get back to let's bring it back to the main point here with the young voters of today wanting socialist candidates or a socialist president, socialist representatives and senators. Um, so would it be fair to say, do you think, Craig, an American man, that literally they lack the education to actually understand what they're even asking for? Or do you think they truly understand what they're asking for, and they literally don't care? Ignorance or apathy?
What do you think, Craig?
It's a good question. I think it's a combination of both.
I would agree. I do.
And
The
since
reason.
I
Go
was
ahead.
just
I'm
going to
sorry.
say, this is an important point because they represent a large voting demographic.
Yes.
So this is not a joke, gang. I meant if you think, oh gosh darn it, they won't be in power until 20, 30 years from now. No,
Right.
no, their voting demographic is huge.
It's
We're
because of
talking
the
about.
media and education and
Mhm.
news. I used to
Programming.
watch things like the liberal media, you know, in college, and Daily Show and Colbert Report, and
Mhm.
and I still like Jon Stewart. I still like Stephen Colbert, but looking back on it now, I could see how a lot of the ways they portrayed certain political issues were quite socialist in a
Right.
favorable light, and but a lot of the commentary was still valid. Obviously, Stephen Colbert would make fun of the neocons, right? That was his whole thing, and that was a totally legitimate criticism of the neocon ideology. you know,
Yeah, well,
um,
they're entertainers, and
right?
but people are looking for their news from these sources, from comedians.
Yeah,
And I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, but it's too easy just to switch on a TV and mindlessly just watch, rather than actually going on the internet, finding good sources and reading.
this infotainment, it has the appearance of being wholesome and um, laughable, and
Another great point.
it's hard not to disagree with the charismatic entertainer, and um, it's very effective. Very effective.
I'd like to make some points here.
Go ahead, American man.
2 points. Point number one: America is copying a lot of the steps that Germany took
Well,
prior
Europe
to
as a whole, but I understand what you're
right,
saying.
right, prior to World War II, and how Hitler indoctrinated a lot of young people, youths. They had their own their version of the Boy Scouts, but it was an SS um, club, youth club, and they pressured other young men before Hitler became the chancellor and got into power to join the Nazis' version of the Boy Scouts, if I may use that as an example. And indoctrination of our youth has been going on in this country for a long time, and this is why and how they're changing the the flow as far as going from capitalist state to a socialist state. This is why these young people are accepting socialism. I mean, look at the teachers that are working for public schools and even in these colleges and universities. These people are pro-socialists. And I don't understand for the life of me, people don't seem to either care or don't realize what they're throwing away as far. Okay. My other point, excuse me, was simply going to be this. The politicians that we are supposedly electing don't care about freedom either.
No. No, they don't.
I mean, listen, if you understand the concept of slavery, okay, if you can understand that, I don't care, if you're at least the age of 10 or above, then you need to get the revelation that you are a slave in this type. I mean, socialism just doesn't control the country economically. It controls it in every way. Your religion, your speech, where you can and can't live, what schools you can and can't go to. They tell you how to think. This is why our people are running around, standing up for things that were 30 years ago considered completely and totally immoral. Perversion has exploded in this country. We've got the alphabet community. You've got men dressing and calling themselves women. And in the state that Chaos Craig lives in, if you don't call that person by their, what's the terminology I'm looking for here?
I think
By
you're
the
thinking of.
proper gender pronoun.
Yep.
Their pronoun. You can be fined and thrown in jail. I mean, if that isn't socialist, well, I don't know what is.
Well, that's a good reason to be antisocial, to be sure.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, I'll tell you what. Conjecture's joined us, but I'm not sure he's going to be chatting with us. But if you guys didn't have any other points, I mean, Conjecture brought up some really good points earlier today about basically how the progressives love to be the champion of causes that end up being socialist in nature.
But yeah,
and where free market actually, prevailed in stopping, like for instance, the exploitation of child labor. The free market did that. Yet the progressives will say, no, we did that. And
right.
he makes a very good point about that.
You don't need to make that a law.
No, not at all.
I mean, if child labor is the best option they have, right? If the child could either work or die of starvation, wouldn't you rather them have the option to work if your society's at that level of development?
Yep.
Well,
right? Well, why do we need to get government mandates involved in here?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that happened in the 20s. That's what they do. You see, they create the conditions that bring the problem, and then they want to offer the solution. But always when government offers a solution to a problem, somehow, some way, we always seem to lose a little bit of ourselves or our civil liberties.
Yep. Well, I'm going to bring up one more point that we haven't brought up in this podcast yet, and that's the basically the crucifixion of the top 1 to 10%, and basically making them the enemy. This is part of what socialism is. That's what they do. Some of those folks, basically at the top 1 or 10% make an enormous amount of money, and they're looked upon by the people, by the lower 50% of society, as the problem. Now, I am going to make it a very important distinction in this podcast, and I hope you've hung on to the end of the podcast. Very important distinction here. It is the policies within our socialist government, and I did say socialist, we have a capitalist socialist government. It's the policies and the laws and the red tape, the rules, the regulations that are put in place by politicians that make those 1% people what they are today. It is not
Right.
because they have necessarily stepped on the backs of the poor. Yes, they have, but only because the whole system was set up for them to step on the backs of
Because
the
they
poor.
have the violence and coercion of government that they could use
Right.
to their
The
advantage. But this
influence.
is nothing new. This is, in fact, all examples of socialism historically have resulted in artificially high wealth inequality from,
Right.
from East Germany. Even within the
China.
U.S., if you look at the bigger government, higher tax states like New York and California, they have the largest wealth gap
Yep.
within their states. So apparently, the left is always complaining about wealth inequality, but their states and the way they run things with their policies create the most wealth inequality of all.
Hmm. Yep. So basically, we can look at and point fingers right now at politicians, um, and say, you guys made it this way. You made
Right.
it so these people don't pay taxes. You made it so these people can exploit others, in
Who
order
do
to
pay
further their
taxes?
goal of being at the top of the 1% margin. So you guys made it that way because of the influence they had on politicians in the first place. This is a very corrupt system. If this were a true capitalist system, this really couldn't happen. It just couldn't. If there weren't any, like for instance, I know a guy who develops real estate. And guess what? He hasn't paid taxes in 18 years. I know him
Wow.
personally. He makes a lot of money. He doesn't pay taxes. Why is that? So why am I paying, so much in taxes and he's paying nothing? I make a little, he makes a lot. And he
Yeah, it
pays.
makes no sense.
So it's because he's taking advantage of what we call loopholes. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So, but this is an important point. I think the young folks see that the politicians are trying to fight these one percenters like Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
This is not true. They are not fighting them. Literally, these are the people who line the politicians' pockets with money. And remember now, campaign rhetoric is just that, campaign
Right.
rhetoric. How many things has Trump promised during his campaign has he fulfilled? How many?
None.
None. That's correct. He talked a good game. I mean, we all
Yep.
thought Hillary was going to go in prison, like
Yep.
February of 2017. It didn't happen.
Yep.
We all thought the wall would be built by now, and they still
Yep.
haven't started construction, the official federal construction. We've had private concerns building walls, but not federal. Um,
Right.
and what else did he promise? Well, he did promise
Obamacare.
get rid of
Obamacare.
Obamacare. We still have Obamacare. These are, yep,
He wasn't gonna fund Planned Parenthood. He did that.
yep. So we could go up and down the list of all the campaign promises, and I think there are websites that talk about, there's like about 40 main campaign promises he made. He kept two of them. And one of them was to get us out of the Paris Accord. He did do that. And then the second thing was to lower taxes. And it turned out he lowered taxes for the top 10%. The middle class actually stayed the same or are paying more. The ones that are bearing a tremendous burden. But I digress. I don't want to go on and on about it. I just want to make the point that Elizabeth Warren is just like Donald Trump. She's making a lot of promises she cannot keep. And they're socialist based. It's, hey, we're going to tax those one percenters. We're going to hit those 10 percenters hard because they're the reason there's so much wealth inequality. No, it's because of politicians. The politicians set up the framework, and the rich people just take advantage of the construct. This is how it works. And so that's why we are not capitalist. We are not a true democracy. We are socialist and we're corporatist. We are, and I've proven this in podcasts gone by. So at any rate, before I wrap it up, does anyone have any further thoughts?
If I may, real quick,
Sure.
from from a business owner's perspective, my girlfriend starting is here in California places. Socialism has caused the government has to come in with these different themselves inspect. I call them tax collectors, and they have to pretty much okay every step and every level opening a business. And if you don't do what they tell you, they can stop you from opening your business. Cost you a lot of money. I want to point that out to young people. If you are an entrepreneur, you have an entrepreneur attitude, especially in a socialist government, and if you live in New York or California, they can pretty much break you. And that's done by design because right now socialism does not include a middle class. It only includes the wealthy and the poor, and that's it. So that's food for thought.
Yep.
Yeah, I just got a letter from the state of New York saying, "Oh, you have to pay us some random extortion fee, otherwise we're going to stop your business from operating in the state
Yep.
Right.
for nothing." You know,
Yep.
what am I paying you for?
Yep.
Right.
I'm dealing with that on another level with sales tax authority in the state of Missouri. And they're trying to extort money out of me too for a quarter that I did not do any billing. And
Right.
they're saying, well, that doesn't follow your pattern, so therefore we're going to go ahead and bill you for the amount that we think that you collected in sales tax. And I'm still battling them on this. This is socialism, gang. This is government totalitarianism. You know,
Yes.
it's just, and by the way, it doesn't really matter what state you're in. The taxing authority is the taxing authority is the taxing authority.
Right.
They exist only to literally extort money out of you. I have a great story I'd like to wrap up with. And
Go ahead.
2 days ago, 3 days ago, I was working at a city office. And by that I mean a government city office. And I'm not going to mention the city. And there was an employee there who was, she had this revelation a while ago, but she just wanted to talk about it. And she talked about it with me. And here's the revelation she had working in a city office in southwest Missouri. She said the city that she lives in and works for exists only to tax the people. That's all they do. And what was really great about the revelation is that, because I already knew this. I knew this. This is what cities actually exist for, is to tax people. But what she made a brand new revelation while she was talking to me. And she said our city court is literally set up to go after those who do not pay their extortion fees. Their tickets from the cops, the fees, or some kind of other fine or some other tax that they don't pay, then they have to go to city court. And so she had that revelation that day while she was talking to me. She goes, "Oh my God, there's even a construct in for, taking care of those who will not go with the city's extortion fees." And I said, "Yes, indeed, that's exactly what they're there for." Um, but it's neither here nor there. I mean, the taxing authority gets bigger and certainly more aggressive under a socialist system, which is what
Right.
we're seeing here in the United States. The taxing authority wasn't like this in the 50s and 60s.
No.
For instance, with the IRS, and I hate to go on, but it's an important point. With the IRS and other taxing authorities, including the Missouri Sales Tax Office, you are guilty until proven innocent. So
Right.
they make an accusation about you, and you now have to go to work, putting together all the paperwork, assembling everything you need to prove that you're innocent of the charge on which they're levying on you, along with the fees, penalties, taxes, whatever. So in America,
You're guilty till proven innocent.
correct.
Right.
That's correct. You're guilty, and I'm in the process of trying to prove my innocence in fact, I've proven it twice, but they
And
claim
they could just come up and accuse you of anything. They could accuse you of making $1 million last
yeah.
year.
Well, that's the thing. I sent them, my bank statements for that quarter. And there was only $1,800 in deposit for that entire quarter, and I showed the invoice for that, and that was a government office. There was no taxes, and they still won't accept that as evidence. They want their money.
Yeah.
But you see, the fact is I didn't collect any sales taxes. So what I have done is I've shut down my sales tax ID number. I will not be a tax collector for the state of Missouri anymore. And by the way, the state of Missouri tax authority I consider very, very separate from what I deal with on many levels with Missouri. We have a great state here, but I'm saying the taxing authority is bad no matter where you go. It doesn't matter if you go to Kentucky, you go to New York, you go to California, Illinois, Missouri, or Minnesota. They all have very aggressive taxing authorities where you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And that's a socialist ideal, is it not?
Papers, please.
Yep,
Yes.
that's right.
Hmm.
So they just want their tax money. Okay, and unless anyone else has any thoughts here, I thought I'd go ahead and wrap her up. But like to go back to Hug Your Kids from Freedom Inc. and say to you one more time, brother, that you've got people that you've never met before praying for you. And, and I'm very sorry about the situation with you losing your son. And keep the faith, brother, and we'll be there for you. If you need anything, you know where to find us.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, gang. Does that pretty much cover it for this story here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. From all of us at Truth, Money, and Freedom, and that includes American Man and Chaos Craig, and thank you so much for coming in and contributing today to this podcast, lending perspectives, especially since you both live in two of the most aggressively taxed states in the United States of America. I really appreciate you being here today. And from us at Truth, Money, and Freedom, we hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving and that you spent time with family, friends, and loved ones. And you got a certain amount of joy from that because we just don't know how many more of these holidays we'll have left where it'll be easy to travel, it'd be inexpensive to buy a meal. We don't know these things. Just like
Right.
it's just we don't know when our time's going to come. So remember to tell the people that you love, tell them you appreciate them, tell them you love them, and that's kind of the message we'd have today, especially since the tragedy that happened to Freedom Inc. So, all right, thanks again for joining us for this epic podcast. This is a long one. If you listened all the way to the end, would you please put in crazy camera in your comment? We'd really appreciate it if we saw that in the comment. Okay, gang, you all have a wonderful day. May God bless each and every one of you. This is TC checking out from Truth, Money, and Freedom, our epic socialism podcast. Have a good day.